Hey guys, so today I want to make a video on my Deadeye League Start Guide. Now, just keep in mind, we don't really know the full patch notes yet. We don't know all the support gems, and we don't know the skill tree. So while this is still kind of a guide to kind of guide you out League Start, it really won't contain all the information because we won't have it until League launches, which, is still fine. If you know me, I constantly keep my guides updated. I stream a lot, so if you want to see what I'm currently doing, always check out the stream. But yeah, we won't have the full passage tree until 0.3 launches, unless GG shows it early. I always update post-launch. I usually have a video the day after of a build update. Once again, if you followed one of my builds, you know the drill where I constantly update my builds, at least for the first few weeks. I'll constantly keep the mobile update as well. I'll have the Mobalytics links down below. But yeah, there is a lot of unknowns here. I'll try whatever new supports and potential skills we get. Ice tipped arrows is definitely one of the new skills that look quite strong, even with line arrow plus rods. But yeah, there's multiple things to test, multiple new support gems. So like I said, it is a lot of unknown right now. Common question I'll probably get is, what about ice skills / ice shot? While they probably will be good, once again, they are unknown. Potentially they are completely strong. We just don't really know how good they are going to be. LA plus Raj is just guaranteed will work. It is strong. Everyone knows it's really good. You'll just have a great time if you start this build. It is just a good starter and scales extremely well into endgame. Even for SSF, you can scale all the way up until tier 4 bosses. So if you are wondering if this is SF viable, yes. Use all rare gear. You don't need to use uniques whatsoever until like Giga endgame, which is not needed. So yeah, it is SF viable. It's just very, very strong and it's tested and it's known it will work. With that said, I probably will try out ice skills eventually. It's just not what I'm going to do day one. I'm just going to do what's known and what works, and that is lightning arrow plus lightning rods. At the most, I probably will test out ice tipped arrows because this one does seem quite free to use. Next question is deflection versus ES or get both. Once again, we don't know until the servers go live and until I play for a bit. Maybe ES is still just so much better and it's not worth investing into deflection. Who knows? But once again, I'll update it as I see fit. But yeah, overall, this is just a really strong starter and currently scales into one of the best endgame builds into the game. This is with current patch notes informations. They could always, last minute nerf this build. Who knows? GG has always been doing a lot of last minute nerfs recently in PoE2. So yeah, who knows? But currently it is just a very solid build. So with all that said, let's just get to the guide real quick. So I do have this fully posted, completely updated for 0.3 lightning arrow Deadeye. So I have two simple, versions here. One is just non-crit early game, we use from like tier 1 all the way up to tier 16, and keep it scaled to like tier 4 bosses. And then the end game version where you swap to crit and hybrid ES. Once again, maybe you go full deflection instead. We don't know. But currently the hybrid ES evasion setup does just work for endgame. It is extremely strong, and it probably still will be extremely strong in the next patch. So it's what I have here for now. This build is very simple to scale, very easy to scale, but I also have all the information down here below. So make sure to read all the notes of what you want in each piece, all the skill selections, the quality prio, the length prio, the tree, all of that. Just to quickly go over the build. So, we were playing LA Raw Deadeye. That means we want a +1 bow. So a Gemini bow is your best base. You really, really want plus arrows on this build. The plus arrow runes are great, but they are expensive, so you don't expect to have it early on. So yeah, you can either use Greatest Storm runes here for flat added damage, or the Fizz or Iron runes if you have a really good Fizz bow. Just kind of depends on what type of bow you have. You can test out in game and see which one gives you more damage. The numbers of gear is pretty simple. Evasion, life resist helmet, evasion, life resist chest. Actually, you usually want the highest evasion chest you can get. So usually you don't get life on your chest, but yeah, try to aim for a very, very high evasion body armor. It's pretty important for staying alive early on. And same with boots, you just want movement speed, evasion, life here, resist. Attributes and stuff is not really needed anymore. They lower the attribute requirements a lot in 0.3. So you probably don't need like any dex, int, or strength on gear. You could probably fill out all of your tree, at least that's what I assume. We'll have to see though. Quiver, just as much damage as you can get. So, increased damage of bow skills, flat damage, fizz damage, projectile speed, attack speed, whatever you can get here. Try to aim for like 4 out of 5 of these stats. Amulet, the only really important stat here is spirit, which you don't need early on, but you do eventually want 30 spirit on your amulet. Besides that, plus 3 projectile skills is extremely strong. Now, as for your rings and gloves, you want as much flat damage here as possible. Preferably physical and lightning damage is your best flat damage here. But if you can't get that, cold damage and fire damage is also okay. It is just worse because you don't really have pen for those elements, but they're still good. You just want as much flat damage as possible. You scale this build heavily with flat damage on rings and gloves. It's very, very important. Yeah, along with your bow as well. And then belt is just typical, life, resist, strength, if you can get it. Now, like I said, this is the non-crit setup. Just early on when you're into maps, you can't really go crit. You don't have any crit whatsoever. So you just stack as much flat damage as possible and as much increased damage as possible, which is also shown down here in the skill tree as well, where the skill tree is just, very, very generic. You're just taking all the increased damage nodes. The only thing new here really compared to last patch is getting these companion nodes. These companion nodes are very, very strong because they just give you 20% increased damage on these small nodes here. Yeah, this companion wheel is very, very good. Besides that, there's not much to really talk about. It's a very generic LA Deadeye tree. I've played this multiple times before and used similar trees like this. You just really take in all the increased damage nodes, take the pen nodes as you get them, and you do reach like 60% pen with the skill tree. And yeah, that's mostly about it. Something to note, like I said, they are reducing the attributes next patch. So you might not even have to travel over down here to Falcon Technique and like proficiency. You currently take these because you do need the dex and the attributes. Maybe next patch this won't be true. We'll have to see. Yeah, that's mostly about it for the skill tree. It's just very, very simple. You path here last. You only path the Falcon Technique when you actually need these dex nodes. So yeah, very, very simple tree. As for skills, I guess this is a little bit more stuff to go over here. But yeah, we have Lightning Arrow, Rod, Hell of Thunder, Wind Dancer, Rhoa Mount, Barrage, Tornado Shot, Stormcrawler Arrow, and Voltaic Mark. I'll go over each skill real quick. So first things first, Rhoa Mount. You can either use Rhoa Mount here or you can use Summon Companion. The choice is up to you. If you use Summon Companion, then use a Summon Companion with a haste aura. It's very, very important to have a companion. Like I said, the skill tree with the companion node right here is just very, very strong. It gives you a lot of increased damage early on. So I do recommend to click these nodes, and it does require a companion. And haste aura from companion is also quite good as you get bonus move speed and bonus attack speed. Now keep in mind, all these links and supports and quality is in order for these skill gems. So for Lightning Arrow, these last gems are the least important. So if you only have a 5 link, then I'll use the first 5. If you only have a 4 link, then use the first 4. So yeah, these are automatically in priority. So that is all you need to know. So if you just enter maps and you only have 4 links, just use the first 4 gems in each of the skills. So the first 2 skills we'll talk about real quick, Lightning Arrow and Lightning Rod. If you're not new to the game, you know what these do. Pretty standard and pretty classic already in PoE2. Just a very strong skill combination. You shoot down your Lightning Rods and then you shoot down your Lightning Arrow. Note, a Lightning Arrow on a single target can only hit up to 8 rods. If you use chain support on your Lightning Arrow, you hit twice as many rods. And that is something you can do for bosses, and I do recommend, especially for early on, when you need more damage, is you put chain onto your Lightning Arrow, and this will vastly increase your single target damage. It doesn't really matter what support you take out at that point, because you're only using chain to increase your Lightning Rod damage. So yeah, if you do want more single target, you put chain on your Lightning Arrow. Do not do this for clear. You'll feel completely trash for clear, but you should do this for bosses like Pinnacle bosses, Zash 0, Arbiter 0, like your first time doing them. It is worth it. But yeah, very, very classic skill. You put down your Lightning Rods. Usually you want at least 8. If you're using chain, you want like 16 plus, and you just spam Lightning Arrow, and that's it, right? Use this during mapping. Most of the time, you only have to use Lightning Arrow during mapping. When you're just starting out, just entering maps, you probably will have to use both Lightning Arrow and Lightning Rod until you're strong enough to where you can just spam Lightning Arrow. Hell of Thunder will start this patch, but still very, very strong. I might test around with other stuff, maybe test Hell of Ash, maybe test the Pulsarcan Ring with Hell of Ice. We'll have to see. But yeah, currently Hell of Thunder is still very strong despite the nerf. I would still use it. Also procs your Innervate, which is a lot of free extra damage. Wind Dancer, your evasion based build, Wind Dancer is pretty much a no-brainer. It's just very, very strong. Rhoa Mount, like I said, you can do Rhoa Mount or you can do Companion. The choice is up to you. Rhoa Mount will require 30 speed on Amulet. So as you enter maps, you probably have to use Summon Companion until you can swap to Rhoa Mount. Or if you don't like Rhoa Mount, then don't swap to it and just keep using the Companion. Barrage is very, very strong. It helps a lot with essentially the pre-burst. So, usually when a boss is spawning, you'll summon all your rods, then you'll test your barrage, and then, shoot out all these line arrows with procs all your rods. So it's just very, very strong. You don't really use it that much while mapping, but it's very, very, very strong on bosses. Tornado Shot, this is also extremely strong for bosses and what you want to be using. So if you don't know what Tornado Shot does, I did explain it in my previous videos. Do watch those. But to explain what Tornado Shot does really quick, you'll fire Tornado Shots, it'll shoot up in the air, come down, only 2 will stay. 2 stays because we're using overabundance here. Do note, if you don't have a level plus arrows, you probably don't want to use overabundance. This gives you a +1 limit. So yeah, you get 2 tornadoes. So what does this actually do? So whenever your Lightning Arrow hits a Tornado Shot, it will actually proc the chain portion of Lightning Arrow. So the arrow itself does not actually have to come out of the Tornado Shot and hit the boss. It just hits the Tornado Shot and only procs the chain from Lightning Arrow. So essentially the TLDR of what this means is if you have 2 tornadoes down and you're in line and the boss is in the middle, you get 3 hits. That is the TLDR. You get a minimum of 3 hits up to 5x hits. It's very, very, very strong, even without a lot of plus arrows. But yeah, but do keep in mind, you do need plus arrows to make this work because these tornadoes do consume your projectiles. So if you only have one arrow, it won't work because it'll hit the tornado and then it won't hit the boss because there's no more arrows at the boss. Yeah, it's just very, very strong. You want to line it up between where the boss is in the middle between the two tornadoes. You fire a light arrow and yeah, you just absolutely melt anything. Do note, you only ever use this for bosses or a map boss. You don't really use it while mapping because it's not really worth it. Next is Stormcrawler Arrow and Voltaic Mark. So this is for like your Giga Shock setup. You can get like 80% shock magnitude on this build, or not shock magnitude, you can get 80% shock on this build. So it's very, very strong, and that's just 80% more damage. So you can set this up in a few ways. Obviously on Stormcrawler Arrow, using Lasting Shock, Overcharge, Conduction, and Commiserate. If you use all of these, and then also use a weapon swap to take all the shock magnitude nodes, so you would take Frazzle, you would come over here and take Unbound Forces, and then also take Harmonic Generator. If you take all of these, you get somewhere roughly around 80% shock with a Voltaic Mark. And obviously, as you know, that's just a ton of extra damage. That is 80% more damage, and shock is buffed this patch to last for 8 seconds. Stormcrawler Arrow has increased shock duration, the tree has increased shock duration, and the support gem has increased shock duration. Meaning with all this together, your one Stormcrawler Arrow that you fire at a boss for shock, it's lasting for over 20 seconds. So you're shocking a single boss for 80% shock for over 20 seconds. It is very, very strong this patch. I would definitely have a Stormcrawler weapon swap setup. Do note in this Mobalytics, I don't have the weapon swap here because the tree is changing. So I doubt it's going to look exactly the same. This is just going to be like a rough guide for you to follow. But yeah, you will want to set up a weapon swap. I have a second bow in your offhand. The second bow does not have to be good. It can just have whatever stats. The important thing would just be setting up your weapon swap points. So you set up for all the shock magnitude points. Once we have the full tree, I'll make sure to have the full weapon swap points inside the guide. But currently, like I said, the tree is going to change, so I don't really see a point in doing it. But yeah, that is the whole point of using Stormcrawler Arrow plus Voltaic Mark. This is pretty much only for pinnacle bosses. You don't need to use this for map bosses. It's just to give you a lot more damage on those, you know, tougher bosses. Yeah, that should be about it for all the skills. I do also explain it down here as well if you want to read more for yourself. Yeah, like I said, the build is looking very, very strong currently. Nothing right here is nerfed in the patch notes besides Hell to Thunder. It is a shame, but it is what it is. We went over the skill tree already, and that's pretty much about it for like the starter non-crit version. I'll quickly go over the crit version, but I expect this version to change the most. I expect the non-crit version, the one you're gonna be playing for, you know, a little bit, will mostly stay the same. But I do expect the crit version to change a little bit because they probably are nerfing crit nodes in the skill tree, and they probably are also nerfing ES in the skill tree. But to go over this real quick, the only really difference here is that you're now stacking evasion and energy shield. So you get a hybrid chest, you get a pure ES helmet, and you can get hybrid gloves and boots, or you can get pure energy shield, evasion boots and gloves as well. That doesn't really matter all that much. The important thing here is a very high hybrid evasion energy shield chest and the highest energy shield helmet you can get. That is very, very important because you do use stuff like Subterfuge Mask, which gives you evasion per ES and helmet. And then you also use Spectral Ward, which gives you max ES per evasion. So yeah, it's very, very important to have the chest and helmet before swapping to the setup. Besides that, you're also going crit. So you also do want a crit bow with crit damage and critical hit chance. You also preferably want a crit quiver. Now you don't need a crit quiver base. You can use whatever base here, but you do want some crit damage and critical hit chance on the suffix of your quiver. Like I said, you are going crit, so you do need some crit stats. Now this version, like I said, I do expect it to change the most, so I wouldn't read too much into it, but the new Frost Bomb should be quite strong. You are going to be like Tri-Elemental, using Ball Lightning with Overcharge, Commission, Unleash, Conduction, and essentially this with the weapon swap of Dark Effigy is one of the last few ways to actually abuse this offhand, which gives you max critical weakness because they nerfed Orb Storms and they nerfed Solo Orb. So those two ways of applying critical weakness is now dead. And I think this is probably like the last or second last way to apply it. I think you can also do Eye of Winter, but yeah, you're using a Ball Lightning here to apply max crit weakness. Then the rest of the setup is the same as before. So Lightning Arrow, Lightning Rod, Hell to Thunder. You have Ghost Dance here now instead of Wind Dancer, because Ghost Dance is how you recover your ES. Rhoa Bound, or like I said, you can use Companion here as well. Barrage, same reason before, and then Tornado Shot, same reason as before. So yeah, the only big difference here is that using Ball Lightning to apply your critical weakness. 20 critical weakness stacks is 10% base crit, which more or less over doubles your critical strike chance as a bow character, so it's very, very, very strong. And do read the notes here as well. If this does not change, I do expect it will. I do have the full rotation down here as what to do as well. This version currently can just shoot up one shot Zash 4. That is how strong LA plus rods is. It does a lot of damage. Have to see what the patch, see what changes, any last minute nerfs, stuff like that. But yeah, I don't want to go over too much on this build because I do expect this crit version to change quite a bit. Definitely in the skill tree and maybe in the gear as well. I'm just releasing these 2 versions because I don't really see a point of releasing more versions when I do expect, you know, a lot of stuff to change in the game because 0.3 is quite of a big patch. Just go over charts real quick for both of them though. Is you want a Thorn Charm. This is always mandatory for being freeze immune. Then after that, a slow charm or a stun charm. And then the third one is the last one you did not use. The pretty standard charm setup though. So yeah, I think that's mostly about it for the LA Deadeye guide. Like I said, it's kind of like a half guide because we don't really know all the changes in the patch yet. But I did want to get this out there to give you somewhat of a heads up to let you know what I'm doing and what I'm planning on doing. And of course, I'll keep it updated as well. I will also have a full leveling guide out as well. That'll probably be in the next video after this one. That will be out before league launch. I've been doing leveling testing with a ton of practice now, getting pretty good at it. And yeah, LA Deadeye is definitely pretty good for leveling. Not top tier, but definitely good enough. It definitely won't be as much of a struggle as 0.2 because it did heavily nerf the campaign after 0.2 launch and also buff skills like Rod. So yeah, that's mostly about it for this video. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. But this is definitely looking like one of the best builds in the patch, unless they nerf at last minute, which would be a shame. But yeah, that's about it.